Sign the papers. Julianne. Right now. You said I was just a poor African immigrant who was lucky to breathe the same air as your family. Well, now you're breathing my air. And I'm charging you for every breath. Sign. Or I'll have the sheriffs drag your mother out of that silk sheet bed by her hair. Before I tell you how I systematically dismantled a 100-year-old New York dynasty in less than 30 days. I have a question for you. Have you ever been looked at like you were a stain on a marble floor? If you've ever been underestimated, drop a 1 in the comments and tell me where you're listening from. Your story starts here. Like and subscribe, because the lesson I'm about to teach the Sterling family is one you don't want to miss. I was sitting at a dinner table that cost more than most people's houses. The Sterlings, to the world, they were old money royalty. To me, they were just loud. I wore a simple, off-the-rack dress, no logos, no flashing diamonds. I kept my hair natural and my voice low. To Julian's mother, Eleanor, this was proof of my poverty. Zuri. Dear, Eleanor said, her voice dripping with that fake Upper East Side sweetness that feels like a razor blade. She didn't look at me. She looked at the way I held my fork. We've been looking into your visa status. It must be so stressful. Coming from... where was it again? A village. I've told Julian that we can set up a small trust for you. Enough to get you settled back home once this engagement phase inevitably concludes. Julian didn't look up from his steak. He was a handsome man. The kind of handsome that only comes from 3 generations of orthodontics and private yachts, but his spine was made of wet cardboard. Mother is just being practical. Zuri, he muttered. The Sterling name carries weight. We can't have people thinking we're a charity for the third world. You're a lovely girl. But you're a guest in this country, and guests eventually go home. The table went silent. Julian's sister, Penelope, let out a sharp, mocking giggle. She was wearing a necklace that she thought was worth $500,000. I knew better. I knew the jeweler who sold it to her father. It was a high-quality lab-grown fake. Bought to cover up a liquidity crisis the family was hiding from the press. I didn't cry. I didn't throw wine. I simply put my fork down. The metal hit the fine china with a tiny clink that sounded like a bell tolling for their funeral. "Izzy," I said softly. I looked Eleanor straight in the eyes. Most people blink when they look at her. I didn't. You think I'm here for the Sterling name? You think I'm here for your wealth? Aren't you? Penelope sneered. Look at your shoes. Zuri, they're scuffed. You probably take the subway. You're a parasite in a Zara dress. I leaned back. A small, ghost-like smile playing on my lips. They didn't know that my scuffed shoes were handmade by a cobbler in Florence who only sees 10 clients a year. They didn't know that I took the subway because I owned the firm that managed the city's infrastructure bonds. Julianne, I said, my voice as smooth as black ice. Are you sure this is what you want? To end it here in front of your family, on your father's birthday? Julian Sahil, looking bored. It's for the best. Zuri, my father is looking at a merger with the Vander Woodson Group. I need a wife who brings more than just culture to the table. I need capital. I need status. You're just a girl from a place that doesn't matter. He pulled a velvet box from his pocket. The ring I had worn for 3 months. I'll take this back now. It's been in the family for generations. It belongs on someone who knows what it's worth. I slid the ring off my finger. It felt lighter than I remembered. I placed it on the tablecloth. You're right, Julian, I whispered. Values are important. And tonight, I've realized exactly what the Sterling family is worth. I stood up. I didn't take my purse. I didn't take the coat Julian had bought me. I walked to the door. Eleanor's laughter following me like a bad smell. Don't forget your culture on the way out, Penelope shouted. I stopped at the heavy oak doors and turned back. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like a hunter who had finally found the target. Eleanor, I said, enjoy the house tonight. walk through every room, touch every painting, because by the end of the month, I'm going to make sure you need an appointment just to stand on the sidewalk outside. I walked out into the cool New York night. I pulled a secondary phone from my hidden pocket, an encrypted device that never saw the light of day. I hit one button. Target confirmed. I said to the person on the other end, "The Sterlings are officially in default. Execute the Black Harvest Protocol. I want every debt, every secret, and every deed they own on my desk by 8:00 m." I stepped into a waiting black sedan that had no license plates. The driver didn't ask where we were going. He already knew. The game was over. The war had begun. I watched the Sterling mansion shrink in the rearview mirror. For 3 months, I had played the role of the sweet, grateful immigrant girl perfectly. I had listened to their insults, smiled at their condescension, and even let Penelope gift me her old, stained designer handbags. As if they were holy relics, they thought they were the puppeteers. They didn't realize I was the one who owned the stage they were standing on. Mom, my driver, Marcus, spoke without looking back. "The forensic team is already logged in. Your father called from Lagos. He wants to know if you want him to intervene. Tell my father to stay in Nigeria and enjoy his retirement," I said, opening my laptop. The glow of the screen illuminated my face in the dark car. "This isn't about the family business. This is personal. The Sterlings didn't just insult me, they insulted our lineage. They called our home a place that doesn't matter. I'm going to show them that in the world of global finance, New York is just a playground. And I own the lease." Before we dive into the data that would end the Sterling dynasty, I want to see who's really paying attention. If you've ever had someone look down on your roots, comment roots below. It's time we show them that the strongest trees have the deepest origins. Don't forget to hit that notification bell. You're about to see how a billionaire truly works. I opened the file labeled Project Sterling Silver. To the public, Sterling Global was a titan of real estate and private equity. But when you peel back the gold leaf, you often find rot. For the last month, while I was supposedly studying for my citizenship test at the library, I was actually buying up the Sterling's distressed debt through a dozen shell companies registered in the Cayman Islands and Mauritius. I scrolled through the first tab, Eleanor Sterling. She was the queen of the charity circuit. She sat on the boards of 3 major museums and a children's hospital. But the records showed something interesting. Her Sterling Foundation had been hemorrhaging money for 5 years. Why? Because Eleanor had a secret. She was addicted to high-stakes underground baccarat in Atlantic City. She hadn't been donating the family's money. She had been laundering it to pay off gambling markers. Then there was Penelope, the fashionista sister who called me a parasite. My investigation revealed that her luxury lifestyle was a house of cards. She was over-leveraged on 17 different credit cards. And her boutique in Soho was actually a front for selling high-end counterfeit goods to her socialite friends to cover her personal bankruptcy. But the biggest prize was Julian, my fiancé. He thought he was a tech visionary. His company, Aura Stream, was supposed to be the next big thing in AI logistics. He had just convinced his father to sink 40% of the family's remaining liquid assets into his latest funding round. I leaned in closer to the screen, a cold chill of satisfaction running through my veins. Julian's revolutionary algorithm didn't exist. He had hired a team of low-cost developers in a basement in Eastern Europe to create a fake user interface. He was using the new investment money to pay off the old investors. It was a classic Ponzi scheme, wrapped in a Silicon Valley bow tie. "Marcus," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "call the chairman of the New York Banking Commission. I believe it's time for a random audit of the Sterling family's primary lender. Right away." "Mom." I looked out the window at the Manhattan skyline. Most people see lights and skyscrapers. I see ledger lines. I see interest rates. I see vulnerabilities. The Sterlings had lived their lives thinking that money was something you used to buy things. They didn't understand that true wealth is a weapon. It's the ability to make someone disappear from society without ever touching them. I tapped a command into my terminal. Within seconds, an anonymous tip was sent to the city's most ruthless investigative journalist. It wasn't about the fraud, not yet. It was something smaller. A video from the gala's security cameras showing Eleanor Sterling screaming at a server for smelling like the working class. In 2026. The court of public opinion is faster than any legal court. Before the sun would rise, the charitable Eleanor Sterling would be the most hated woman on the internet. Her reputation was the foundation of the Sterling name. I was going to crack the foundation first. I closed my laptop and felt the weight of the city around me. They thought I was a girl who needed a visa. They didn't know I was the one who could revoke their entire world. Julian. I whispered to the empty car. I hope you enjoyed that steak. It was the last meal you'll ever eat that you can actually afford. By 9:00 a.m. the next morning, the internet was already on fire. The video of Eleanor Sterling berating a server, the poor gate scandal, as the tabloids called it, had gone viral. But while the public was busy being outraged by her manners, I was busy dismantling her daughter's life. Penelope Sterling's Atelier P was the crown jewel of her social media persona. She claimed to sell ethically sourced, high-fashion pieces for the modern woman. In reality, her boutique was a vanity project funded by money that didn't belong to her. I was sitting in a high-rise office in Battery Park, looking at a wall of monitors. I wasn't wearing a Zara dress today. I was in a tailored charcoal suit, my hair pulled back tight, looking like the financial assassin I was born to be. Did you find it? I asked. My lead analyst, Sarah, nodded. You were right. Zuri. Penelope hasn't been paying her suppliers in months. She's been diverting funds from the Sterling Youth Arts Initiative, the family's biggest charity, directly into her boutique's payroll. It's blatant embezzlement. I smiled. It was almost too easy. People like the Sterlings become so blinded by their own reflected glow that they forget how easy it is for shadows to grow in the corners. Let's give Penelope a little visit, I said. I want to see the look on her face when the parasite walks through her front door. Before we get to the moment Penelope's world shatters, I have a challenge for you. If you've ever had a friend or a colleague try to pass off fake success as real, comment fake below. Let's see how many of us have dealt with these pretenders. And if you're enjoying this takedown, make sure you're subscribed for part 4. It's going to get much worse for Julian. I walked into Penelope's boutique on Mercer Street around noon. The air smelled like overpriced peonies and desperation. Penelope was there, frantically barking orders at an assistant, trying to manage the PR nightmare her mother had started. When she saw me, she froze. Then, she laughed, that same sharp, mocking giggle from the dinner table. Zuri, what are you doing here? Did you come to beg for your engagement ring back? Or are you looking for a job as a janitor? Because with my mother's video blowing up, I could use someone to scrub the floors and stay out of sight. I walked over to a rack of pure silk gowns. I felt the fabric between my thumb and forefinger. Polyester blend, I said calmly. Made in a sweatshop in Shenzhen, but labeled as handmade in Italy. The markup is almost 4,000%. But Penelope, even for a Sterling. Penelope's face went pale. You don't know what you're talking about. Get out before I call security. Oh, you can call them, I said, stepping closer. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. But before you do, you might want to check your business email. I just sent over a copy of the audit I ran on the Sterling Youth Arts Initiative. It's amazing how much the IRS cares about charity funds being used to pay for, let's see, personal private jet charters and luxury handbag inventory that turns out to be high-grade knockoffs. She lunged for her iPad, her hands shaking, as she read the document. The color drained from her lips until she looked like a ghost. Where? How did you get this? She whispered. I didn't get it. Penelope. I own the debt of the building this boutique is in. And as of 10 minutes ago, I've declared your lease in default due to illegal business activities on the premises. You have 1 hour to pack your personal belongings. Anything with an Atelier P tag stays here. It's collateral now. You can't do this. She screamed, her voice cracking. My father will destroy you. We are the Sterlings. Your father is currently sitting in an emergency board meeting because the bank just froze his corporate credit lines. I said, checking my watch. And your brother. He's about to find out that his investors are actually just me. Wearing different hats. You aren't the Sterlings anymore. Penelope. You're just a group of people who are about to be very, very broke. I leaned in, my breath hitting her ear. By the way, I whispered, that necklace you're wearing, the lab-grown one, I've already sent the footage of you wearing it to your exclusive socialite group chat. Along with the receipt showing it's a fake. In this city, being poor is a tragedy, but being a fraud, that's a death sentence. I turned and walked out, the sound of my heels on the marble floor sounding like a gavel. Behind me, I heard the sound of glass breaking. 1. Sterling down. 3 to go. While Penelope was having a mental breakdown on Mercer Street, I was already moving toward the heart of the Sterling Empire. Julian, my fiancé. The man who thought he was a genius because he was born with a silver spoon and a Harvard degree his father bought for him. He was currently at the Aura Stream headquarters, a glass and steel temple to his own ego in Chelsea. He was preparing for his Series B funding announcement. He thought he was about to become a billionaire. He didn't know he was about to become a headline. I walked into his office without an appointment. His assistant, a young girl who looked like she hadn't slept in a week, tried to stop me. I simply handed her a black business card with a gold-embossed eagle, the seal of Onyx sovereign wealth. Her eyes went wide, and she stepped aside. Julian was standing by the window, looking out over the Hudson River. He didn't even turn around. Zuri, I told you. The trust fund paperwork will be sent to your lawyer. There's no need for this final goodbye drama. I'm busy launching a legacy. A legacy of what? Julian, I asked, sitting in his leather chair and putting my feet up on his mahogany desk. Lies? Or just plain old-fashioned theft? He spun around, his face reddening. Get your feet off my desk. Who do you think you are? I'm the person who just bought 51% of your debt convertible notes, I said, spinning a gold pen between my fingers. Which means, technically, this isn't your desk. It's mine. And the chair mine. Even that overpriced espresso machine in the corner. Yeah, I own that too. Before I show you the exact moment Julian realizes his tech empire is actually a crime scene, I want to hear from you. Have you ever worked for a boss who acted like a king but couldn't even do your job? Comment ghost below. And stay tuned, because in part 5, we're going for the head of the dragon. Eleanor. Julian laughed, but it was a nervous, high-pitched sound. You're delusional. You're an immigrant with a library card. You don't have that kind of capital. You really should have paid more attention when I talked about my village. Julian, I said, leaning forward. My village is a private estate in the Lagos suburbs with its own security detail and a fiber optic link to the London Stock Exchange. My father didn't send me here to find a husband. He sent me here to scout American infrastructure for our family's holding company. I only stayed with you because I wanted to see how deep the rot in New York old money really went. And boy, did you deliver? I flipped my laptop around. On the screen was a live feed of his server room. It was empty, just rows of blinking lights connected to nothing. Your AI logistics engine, I said. It's a Python script that generates random numbers to look like data. You've been using the Series A funds to pay for your penthouse, your mistress's apartment in Brooklyn, and your father's failing offshore accounts. That's not tech, Julian. That's wire fraud. Julian's breath hitched. He lunged for the laptop, but I closed it with a snap. Don't bother, I said. The SEC is already in the lobby. I gave them a copy of your real ledger, the one you kept in the hidden drive under your vacation photos. You see, Julienne, you thought you were playing me, but while you were teaching me how to use a salad fork, I was teaching myself how to bankrupt your entire bloodline. Zuri, please. He stammered, dropping to his knees. The Prince of New York was finally where he belonged. At my feet. We can fix this. We can get married today. I'll give you everything. Just don't let them take me. My father's heart can't take a scandal like this. I stood up and smoothed out my jacket. I looked down at him with the same cold indifference he had shown me at the dinner table. You said I was a guest in this country. Julienne. Well, guests eventually leave. But before I go, I like to make sure I've cleaned up all the trash. I walked toward the door. As I opened it, 2 federal agents in windbreakers stepped in. Julian Sterling, the lead agent, asked, "You're under arrest for securities fraud and money laundering." I didn't look back. I had one more stop to make. The Sterling estate. The house they loved more than their own children. It was time to take their roof. The Sterling estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, was more than just a house. It was a 2-2-room fortress of ego, filled with stolen history and old money smells beeswax, stale gin, and arrogance. I arrived just as the sun was setting, casting long, jagged shadows across the perfectly manicured lawn. I didn't knock. I had the keys, or rather, I had the legal right to change the locks. Eleanor Sterling was in the grand drawing room, clutching a crystal glass of scotch. The viral video of her screaming at the server had already cost her 2 board seats and a lifetime membership at the Metropolitan Club. She looked older, the cracks in her foundation finally showing through the expensive Botox. "You," she hissed, standing up. "How dare you set foot on this property? The security team has been notified. You are trespassing. You little immigrant thief. Check your phone." "Eleanor," I said, walking to the fireplace and warming my hands. "The security team was notified that they're now on my payroll. And as for trespassing, you can't trespass in a house you technically own." Before I reveal the secret Eleanor was hiding in the basement of her soul, "I have a question for you. Have you ever dealt with a Karen who thought she owned the world just because of her last name? Type Karen in the comments. And stick around, because part 6 is the total foreclosure. And it's a masterpiece of karma." Eleanor's hand shook as she looked at her phone. Her face went from a pale white to a sickly gray. "What is this? A notice of foreclosure? This is a mistake. This house has been in the Sterling family for 4 generations. It's unencumbered." It was unencumbered. I corrected her, turning around to face her. "Until your husband, Arthur, decided to use the deed as collateral for a private bridge loan from a firm called Atlas Capital. He was trying to cover up Julian's losses and your gambling debts. He thought he was borrowing from a friend. He didn't realize that Atlas Capital is a subsidiary of my family's office." I walked over to a portrait of a 19th century Sterling patriarch hanging on the wall. I tilted it slightly, just to annoy her. "You see, Eleanor, while you were busy trying to find ways to deport me, I was busy buying up your life. I didn't just buy the debt. I bought the tax liens. I bought the outstanding maintenance contracts for the staff. I even bought the rights to the name Sterling in the state of New York." "You're a monster," she whispered, her voice cracking. "No," I replied, my voice as cold as a winter morning in Lagos. "I'm a businesswoman. You taught me that value is everything. Remember? Well, I valued this house at exactly $0 once I realized how much hate lived inside it. But the land is worth a fortune. I'm thinking of turning this drawing room into a community center for immigrants. We'll call it the Zuri Center for Cultural Excellence. How does that sound for a legacy?" Eleanor lunged at me, her manicured nails like claws. But my security detail, the men she thought worked for her, stepped in front of me with the silent precision of statues. "Don't," I said, It's beneath you. Or what's left of you. Anyway, I pulled a legal folder from my bag and tossed it onto the coffee table. You have 24 hours to vacate. I've been generous. I'm letting you keep your clothes. But the jewelry? Every piece of Harry Winston and Cartier you're wearing was purchased with funds diverted from the Sterling Foundation. Those belong to the creditors now. Hand them over. Onabiwan. The Queen of New York had to unclip her pearls, her diamond studs, and her heavy gold bracelets. She looked small. She looked common. She looked like exactly what she had accused me of being. A woman with nothing. Where is Arthur? She sobbed. Your husband is currently at a secure location being questioned by the FBI regarding the offshore accounts I discovered. I said, but don't worry. I'm sure he'll have plenty of time to think about his family's values in a federal cell. I walked out of the room, leaving her standing in the center of her empty empire. The house felt colder already. 4 sterlings. 4 failures. Now, it was time for the grand finale. The Sterlings had one final tradition they refused to let go: the annual Diamond Winter Gala. Even with the walls closing in, Eleanor and Arthur believed their status would protect them. They thought if they could just put on their tuxedos and gowns one last time, the world would forget the scandals. They were wrong. I wasn't just going to take their money. I was going to take their stage. The gala was held at the Pierre Hotel. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and the quiet panic of the New York elite. I arrived late intentionally. I wasn't the +1 anymore. I was the main event. I stepped out of my car wearing a gown of molten gold, designed by a young African artisan whose career I had just launched with $1 million grant. As I entered the ballroom, the music didn't stop, but the breathing did. Zuri Julian's voice came from the bar. He looked disheveled, his tuxedo jacket stained, his eyes bloodshot. He was out on bail. A ghost of the man who had mocked my subway shoes only weeks ago. What are you doing here? This is a private event. You don't belong here. Actually, Julian, I said, taking a glass of vintage champagne from a tray champagne from a vineyard I now held a majority stake in. I'm the reason this party hasn't been shut down yet. I paid the catering bill this morning. Otherwise, you'd be serving tap water and saltines. Before I deliver the final blow that leaves the Sterling name in the ash heap of history, I want to ask you, what's the best revenge you've ever seen? Was it success, or was it watching someone lose exactly what they used to bully others? Comment karma below. This is part 6. Don't blink, because the ending is near. Arthur Sterling, the patriarch, stepped forward. He tried to puff out his chest, but he looked like a man made of paper. You've done enough damage. Young lady, you've humiliated my wife and harassed my son. Leave now, or I'll have you blacklisted from every bank in this city. I laughed. It wasn't a mean laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had already won. Arthur, you're still using the language of 1990. You can't blacklist the person who just bought your bank's outstanding commercial paper. I don't need your permission to be here. I'm here to collect. I snapped my fingers. Marcus, my head of security, stepped forward and handed me a megaphone. I didn't need it for the volume. I needed it for the authority. Ladies and gentlemen, I called out. The room went dead silent. I hate to interrupt the festivities, but I have a special announcement. As of 6:00 p.m. tonight, the Sterling Group has officially filed for Chapter 7 liquidation. This hotel, the art on these walls, and even the jewelry some of you are wearing on loan from the Sterling Foundation are now the property of the Onyx Sovereign Trust. Gasps rippled through the room. Eleanor Sterling, standing on the stairs, gripped the railing so hard her knuckles turned white. You can't do this here. She shrieked. Not in front of everyone. Why not? Eleanor, I asked, my voice echoing. You had no problem insulting my heritage in front of your friends. You had no problem calling me trash at your dinner table. I thought you'd appreciate the transparency. After all, The Sterlings are all about branding, aren't they? I looked at the crowd, the bankers, the socialite, the people who had turned their backs on me when I was just Julian's immigrant girlfriend. For those of you who have business with the Sterlings, my office will be open on Monday. For the rest of you, enjoy the champagne. It's the last thing this family will ever provide for you. I walked over to Julian, who was trembling. I reached into his pocket and pulled out the keys to the Sterling penthouse. I believe these belong to the landlord now, I said. You have until midnight to get your things. And Julian, don't forget your tech folders. The FBI is very interested in those Python scripts. I turned my back on them and walked toward the exit. I didn't look back to see Eleanor faint. I didn't look back to see Arthur crumble into a chair. I didn't have to. I knew exactly how the story ended for them. The poor African immigrant was walking out the door, and the wealthy Sterlings were left with nothing but the bill. 1 month later, I sat on the terrace of a private villa overlooking the Atlantic. Far from the frantic energy of New York City, the air here was clean, smelling of salt and possibility. On the table before me lay a stack of newspapers. The headlines were a symphony of justice. Sterling Empire collapses. Julian Sterling sentenced to 15 years. Eleanor Sterling's foundation exposed as billion-dollar Ponzi scheme. The world was shocked. They called it the fall of the century. But to me, it was just a necessary balancing of the scales. Before I share the very last thing I said to the Sterlings before they disappeared into obscurity, I want to thank you for coming on this journey with me. If this story taught you that your worth isn't defined by what others say, but by the power you hold inside, comment "Empowered" below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell. Our next story is even more explosive. Now, let's finish this. The final meeting didn't happen in a ballroom. It happened in a sterile, fluorescent-lit room at the New York State Department of Corrections. Arthur and Julian were in orange jumpsuits. Eleanor was sitting behind the glass, her designer clothes replaced by a cheap, gray tracksuit. She looked like a shadow of a person. They had begged for this meeting. They thought I was there to offer them a deal, a way out. Zuri! Please, Arthur rasped, his voice trembling. We've lost everything. The house, the reputation, the money. Julian is facing decades. Eleanor is. She's not built for a life of poverty. Just a small loan. A gesture of mercy for the family you almost joined. I looked at them through the glass. I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel pity. I felt the cold, hard clarity of a diamond. You talk about mercy, Arthur, I said, my voice steady and calm. But did you show mercy to the thousands of families Julian defrauded? Did you show mercy to the immigrants you called trash while you were stealing from the very charities meant to help their children? You didn't lose everything because of me. You lost everything because you were never who you claimed to be. You were just hollow statues covered in gold paint. I just brought the rain. Julian looked up, tears streaming down his face. I loved you, Zuri, in my own way. No, Julian, I said, standing up. You loved the idea of someone you could look down on. You loved the power you thought you had over a poor immigrant. You never even learned my last name, did you? If you had, you would have realized that my father's company was the one that saved your father's bank back in '08. We've been the lions all along. You were just the sheep wearing our wool. I turned to Eleanor. She was staring at me with a hollow, haunted look. You told me once that I should go back home because guests eventually leave. I said softly, well, I am going home. I'm going back to a country that is building the future. While you're stuck in a past that's rotting, I'm taking your estate, your assets, and your name, and I'm using them to fund the dreams of people you thought weren't worthy of your heir. I walked to the door, but stopped and looked back one last time. By the way, Eleanor, I checked the records. Your great-grandfather didn't start with old money. He was an immigrant. 2. He started with a pushcart and a dream. The difference between him and me is that I kept my integrity, and the difference between him and you is that he actually worked for his success. You just spent it. I walked out of that prison and into the bright, blinding light of a new day. My car was waiting. My life was waiting. The Sterlings were no longer a dynasty, they were a footnote. A cautionary tale for anyone who thinks that wealth gives them the right to dehumanize others. In the end, the poor immigrant didn't just survive. She repossessed the world they thought they owned. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's just a quiet woman with a plan and a very, very long memory. Thank you for listening. Your support means the world to us. Leave a comment about what you'd like to see in our next drama. And we'll see you very soon. Goodbye for now.